All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary? Carried. Thank you very much for that. Okay, we're now moving to a more substantial, or no, not more, to the important item of the long-term mayoral proposal. And I want to thank councillors and our IMSB colleagues for all their work on their long-term plan to date, including attending all 40+ workshops to get to this point. Our local board chairs have observed this process as well and have come up with excellent feedback. It's well to note that local board chairs were involved all the way through. It's now time for us to decide on what Auckland public can have a say on. Through the last annual budget process and afterwards, you asked for this LTP process to be different to the previous ones. Particularly, you all wanted this to be politically led, not staff led, and this is what we've had. We had facilitated sessions with Toby. Where are you, Toby? Thanks too, by the way. Tamsin and co. to start this conversation in June, before we'd even finished the last budget. Plus the work done by the political working groups and the direction document to staff about what options we all wanted to see presented to us. And through all of this, we all had the opportunity to raise and get staff to consider options that could be included in my proposal for consultation. During the annual budget process, many of you wanted to put up ideas that had not been previously put up and got told that we couldn't. Through the working groups, we now have put them up, and a lot of the ideas have made it into the proposal. I want to thank all the staff in council and the CCOs who've been doing the hard work behind the scenes to provide us with the advice that we asked for. I know we haven't always been easy on you. What we were told early on, clearly reinforced throughout this process, is that we were working towards a point where trade-off decisions will have to take place. And we're not even there yet. It'll be following further consultation. We just know what the two ends of that spectrum are for spending and outcomes, and what the combination of options are in between, because we have to get a rates path for the next 10 years. Now, after all the advice, the questions, comments, conversations, agreements and disagreements, I've put together what I think is the right combination that keeps rates affordable and delivers those things that Aucklanders actually want. We can't keep relying on debt to solve our financial problems. Anyone whose mortgage has just come off 2% can see that. So I propose that we refresh our fiscal rules and reduce our debt to revenue limit. We keep on track to fully fund depreciation by 2028. We find savings by doing things better, faster and cheaper, including mandating group shared services. We introduce new budget responsibility rules and benchmarks on spend, so we stay accountable to the public and don't waste money. I propose that we fix, finish and make the most of the infrastructure we have, and no new mega projects. And if we do other things I'm proposing for the LTP, we can keep average residential rate increases to 7.5% in year 1, down to 3.5% in year 2, and 8% in year 3, which would be almost all of an increase due to the CRL operating costs. After that, we can get down to rate increases falling to near inflation. I'm sure our ratepayers will thank us for finally putting all the costs on the table and dealing with it up front, rather than surprising them and ourselves with new and unexpected costs everywhere, but like last year. On transport, getting Auckland moving requires us to do something different, so I'm proposing to take a more structured approach to funding Auckland transport and its priorities. This includes things like road renewals and getting on with fixing unsealed roads, making public transport faster and something people actually want to use, including a $50 weekly pass, which I've heard is hugely popular. But I'm still on to get rid of cones and slash the cost of temporary traffic management, don't worry. There will be a cone run. On a more serious note, strengthening Council's physical and financial resilience. Climate change impacts pose a real risk to Council in the Auckland region, not just to our physical assets but to our finances. We need to have the foresight to prepare the Council for these risks, so I'm proposing that we deliver the full Making Space for Water program over 10 years. We establish the Auckland Future Fund, which will be a new $3 billion plus regional wealth fund for Auckland to secure its long-term financial future in the face of climate change risks and make the most of our strategic financial assets. I'd like to thank Councillor Fletcher and her group for her group's leadership on this, and we will make sure there is additional information coming, which we already commissioned. We plan for the return of some prime waterfront land back to the Council. That we consult Aucklanders on options to get a better return from the port, either from pushing for more improvements in their current operation or of leasing their operations for a 35-year term in exchange for an upfront payment that will be invested in the Future Fund. I wanted to briefly discuss the work that has gone on to get us to the position where we can consult on these options to the port. The Council started work on this in 2021 under Mayor Goff's leadership, and commissioned detailed review work from external advisors in 2022, following a decision of the CCO Oversight Committee about the Council's ownership objectives. That decided that these two options were the two options that met our objectives. So this is not something I've sprung on us. There were 3 confidential governing workshops this year in July, August and September, plus 1 confidential budget committee workshop in November. The advice from the external advisors was very positive about the prospects of the lease option and to really realise better value and about our ability to impose conditions to protect what is important in that lease. The Investments Working Project Group commissioned an initial independent review of that advice by John Crawford, which is presented to you at the Budget Committee workshop last week. They've also commissioned further robust independent advice, which we will have the benefit of before we decide on the consultation document. We're only discussing what we could consult on before we've actually, so that we can get to a document which we also have to approve. There's a lot more to do, but if we do consult on this, I've pointed out that I will only support that if the lease can meet the conditions set out in section 166 of my proposal. And 166 ensures public ownership, that we keep the waterfront's land. The footprint consolidation, we make better use of the port footprint and return port land. We have strategic rail investments that the Port Partner invests in rail, port road infrastructure, and has a plan to take trucks off our busy roads, particularly during the day. We cease importing coal and other dirty, dusty trades as soon as practicable where alternatives exist for these trades. We want a cleaner, greener port for the city moving forward. Safety and environmental standards. We set improved operating safety and environmental standards, including Scope 1, 2, 3 emissions and protection. And where appropriate, the enhancement of life-supporting capacity in the natural history and physical resources of the Hauraki Gulf, with transparent reporting to Council performance, including on-site tenants against these standards and penalties for falling short of our requirements. We ensure that port jobs are safeguarded and workforce entitlements are protected for those working at the port, including union representation, ideally with requirements to ensure local employment and business procurement are prioritised by any operating partner. There is no danger about jobs. Future investment. The operating partner pays for all future investment at the port to create growth and jobs, including a mandate to deliver on minimum asset maintenance standards to ensure there is no asset stripping and investing in infrastructure ahead of the demand curve where commercially feasible. And we have the right to be consulted on matters we consider important to the Council. And lastly, port prices and access is properly regulated. I will not allow unconstrained commercial activity in our waterfront at the cost of our local businesses. However, ratepayers cannot continue to subsidise port importers by the port not recovering its operating and capital costs. Those are very important basis and would give us much more control over the port than what we had at the moment. I've also made it clear that consultation needs to be balanced and fair and evenly compare the two options. There is no predetermination here. Basically what I'm saying is that I think there is enough here for us to ask Aucklanders what they think. Local boards. I've been clear since I was elected that I want to empower local boards for fairer funding and the right support to make better decisions for their communities. So I'm proposing that we go faster on the move to fairer funding through a mix of new funding and reallocation. Some of that reallocation will be slightly difficult for some of those local boards, and we've already heard from Councillor Lee this morning. We need to get on faster and more efficient asset optimisation. Local board members have told me that they want better and faster advice on this, so I've told the Chief Executive to do that. Local boards have been delayed for years while we dither around supporting them to make decisions that they have decided are good for their communities. Community assets, services and open space. We're going to be investing $4 billion in capital and $6.7 billion in operating expenditure on community assets, service and open space. It's big money. And Auckland tell us this is some of the most loved things that we deliver. But we need to do it differently, not just rely on things from 50 years ago. So I'm proposing that we ring-fence $700 million of operating costs to help transition council and local boards away from poor quality assets and address deficits in indoor sports facilities. We pause funding for seismic upgrades until we have a review of standards and regulations. And I note the new Minister of Regulations is up for this. We look for improvements or additions to the regional park network, particularly in South Auckland. This idea came from the Regional Parks Working Group, so thank you, councillors, on that working group. We are here listening. Regional facilities and development. We have to be clear about the benefits we get from the funding we give to regional development. We can't just keep funding things that don't work, so I'm proposing that. We maintain our current funding for economic development and events until alternative revenue like the midnight visitor levy is progressed, and I can report that the income government appears to be interested in this. And we do have the support of both the hotel and the Airbnb industries. We restore the strategic development funding for Ika Panuku so they keep regeneration activity going without looking for funding. And we investigate options for making more of the North Shore Stadium precinct for the North Shore community. Maori outcomes. I'm pleased that we have engaged with iwi leaders and the IMSB, and thank you for the meetings I've had with them on what steps we can take to improve Maori outcomes in Auckland. Well, funding is not the only answer. I am proposing that we increase the total funding for Maori outcomes to $171 million in the LTP, with a focus on ensuring this is spent to get good quality outcomes in partnership with Maori. Finally, water care. While legally we cannot take Watercare's funding into account in this LTP, which seems not only odd but bizarre, we do know that the new government is going to change things. There's got to be some certainty for Watercare. I'm proposing that we keep Watercare's debt to revenue setting at 340%. I know this means that Watercare will have to make some tough decisions regarding the pricing of water and growth charges, but I think we need to be prudent with our group debt levels until the new government has given us their plan for water. And I can confirm, having met with the new incoming Minister of Local Government, that he is well aware of this issue and has thoughts in play to deal with it. Now that is a brief outline of my proposal. No fancy PowerPoint here, just me. But I also want to consult and ask Aucklanders on the other options of spending more to do more, or spending less to do less. We shouldn't limit ourselves for no reason. The do more scenario requires rates to be higher for longer, and the do less scenario means lower rates increases. And there are people in favour of both extremes. On Monday night, I heard from the co-chairs of our advisory panels. These are groups who reflect the different communities of Auckland. Councillor Ferry does an excellent job of leading these, along with the councillors who work with each one. And I hope you've listened to them. The panels represent important voices, but those are often not the loudest voices. What I heard, well, both Councillor Ferry and I heard loud and clear on Monday from the Pacific peoples, seniors, ethnic groups, rainbow groups, disability and youth advisory panels, was that they liked having the broadest range of options in order for our communities to have their say. And I quote, "We all met, we've all talked about this, and we all want to see it go through to consultation." So those of you that want to reduce things today, you'll have to deal with Barry the Geest. So we might not all agree with everything in my proposal, but I don't want to see our communities chopped out from having their say. By putting the broadest range of options out on the table, we leave ourselves the ability to talk to the community about what they want, not what 20 people around a table want. And Councillor Walker made an excellent point. The broadest base of opportunities and the broadest base of things which are available there to be discussed with the most people. In my view, this is the most fair and balanced thing we can do as a council. Present all the options for Aucklanders to tell us what they think, rather than take any of these choices off the table. I understand and respect that there are different points of view around this table. Some of you may not agree on everything with my proposal, but you don't have to make final judgments today. We're just deciding on what options to ask Aucklanders to have their say on. As a chair, I want to make it very clear that we need to use our time today as effectively as possible. Okay, we'll have some questions. There'll be dozens of them. I will be stricter than usual with questions and not comments or speeches, please. We've had 44 sessions for that. Afterwards, staff will step back from the table and then we can move into the debate. Questions will be in strict order of the key elements of the proposal I spoke to earlier. If you're looking to propose an amendment or a change, I ask that you provide it in writing and signed in accordance with Standing Orders 1.5.3 to Sonia so that they can be properly considered at the right time during this meeting. And I also ask that any amendments be clear as to how the amendment leads to a balanced budget. That means being clear about what goes in and what comes out from here. So with that, I'll go straight to questions. Okay, I'd like the council staff associated with us to come to the table to answer any questions.
Okay, well, starting with financial strategy and main levers.
Yes,
okay.
And I will take questions in order of groupings within my proposal. So you don't all have to stick your hand up about the bits down the track that you are worried about. What we're going to do is start with questions associated with the financial strategy and main budget levers. Now these are the refresh the fiscal rules, they're in the key proposal, then we'll go to community assets, then we'll go to regional facilities, then we'll go to Maori outcomes, then we'll go to water care. Go through all of those, and then we'll probably have a cup of tea and move to debate. Okay, questions with regards to financial strategy and main budget levers. Do we have any? Councillor Henderson, please.
Sorry. So the budget responsibility rules and tying things to the rate of inflation, are we talking about council-related basket of goods or a general inflation, given that we don't buy capsicums?
So in terms of the budget rules, what we're looking to do is, and we've started to do through this process, is rather than just automatically apply inflation and take last year's plus inflation, it's sort of start with last year's and sort of what is the dollar amount, what are the contractual increases. So it's kind of looking at so we're kind of starting point is work with last year's budget and then look at what are the contractual increases. So for this process, what we've done is we've looked at a wide range of inflators, including CPI, a council basket, but also some of the indices that are relevant to the council sector, such as transport costs, construction costs, and we've supplied that to council departments and CCOs and said, use that and your own information to try to identify what are the unavoidable cost pressures. So we're kind of looking at, well, what are the actual real drivers of cost? We're not sort of sitting here taking, we will inflate all costs by a certain index. We're taking out what is the actual cost, what are the drivers, and we're asking people to sort of justify any unavoidable cost of pressure and explain the reasons for that.
And I might add, we're trying to change the behaviour where everyone just adds on inflation. And yesterday at the Budget Committee, for those who endured that punishment, towards the end there we even questioned the Auditor General, who just slapped on inflation and thought that was okay. But we pointed out, you're doing the same thing all the time. Surely you must learn how to do it, get better at it. I'm not accepting inflation. The Editor General liked that much, but I enjoyed telling him. Okay, I don't have any further. They've been well telescoped here. I'm sorry, Philippina. Humble apologies.
Can we just pause for the 5 minutes before we get
Thank you, Chair.
We got to what?
In regards to the mayoral proposal, can you tell me if the airport shares or the leasing of the port, has that, the amounts that we could get, because we don't know, has that been taken into account for the long-term plan mayoral proposal that we have in front of us? Have the figures for that been part of what we see now?
Yes, so the proposal in front of you and the rates increases on the resolution there all factor in the proposed future fund, and the proposal is the prepaid lease of the port operating company and the transfer of the airport shares into that fund with the ability for the fund managers to diversify that over time. So that is all baked into the proposal here and the recommendations in front of you today.
So supplementary to that, so even though we don't know what the amount we will receive if the airport sales are sold, because we'll have to go and have a look at the market currently, nor do we have a defined figure around the leasing and how much the leasing of the ports would bring us. You're saying that this has been taken into account. So in the first 3 years of the long-term plan, with the rate rise that have been identified in the proposal, that has been taken into account for the whole of the 10 years or just for the 3?
So it's been taken into account within the full set of numbers in the 10-year budget. We have to operate on the best information currently available. So for the Auckland Airport shares, it's based off the current, most recent share price. And in terms of ports, it's based off the best information that the council has received to date on what is likely to be achieved through that prepaid lease. So it is based off best information. We will have to, in the consultation materials, disclose the basis of those forecasts, disclose the level of uncertainty, and maybe do some scenario testing to say, well, what if the numbers were higher or lower? But we have to produce a plan based off the best information we currently have.
Further question, Chair. So we've taken into account possibilities in regards to what we could get, and we've factored that into the consultation document even though we don't know the figures. So that's what I'm hearing, that we've taken into account what possibly we could get, and we don't know because the market's going to be changing in the next 3 years, let alone 10. But we've taken that into account, and to say that the rates will be there, because the supplementary to that is what happens if the decision is not to end up selling the shares or leasing the port.
I'll be able to tell you what that, if that was a decision, we'll be able to tell you exactly the same way. Everything.
But I just want to get from the finance team, what happens, what shortfall in this current proposal, because you're saying we have to take that into account, how much shortfall will we have if it doesn't, if the decision is made is not to sell the shares or lease the port? How much of a hole will we then, based on what you've given me, how much of a hole will we have?
So what you have in front of you is a mere proposal. The consultation document hasn't been prepared yet. The consultation document will have to be based off the best information and show what are the impacts if things don't proceed, and provide that kind of the range of impacts. As I said, the proposals in front of you have the are based off the best information with the future fund included. If the future fund wasn't included, the rates increases would need to be higher over the next 3 years.
Actually, I've just been asked to pause for 5 minutes for a toilet break, so just pause for 5 minutes and we'll be back in a minute.